Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Talking About the Big Stuff podcast with Michael Cole and Matthew Cravat. I am Michael Cole.
And I am Matthew Cravat.
All right, tonight's topic is good art versus enjoyable art.
Yeah, for me, an enjoyable art is Garfunkel.
Nice. I wish I had another art. I wish I could think of a single other person in art.
It's not easy.
Nope, I got nothing. You took the one good one. I feel like that's a rule in improv that you're not supposed to do that.
I mean, it's hard when you're taking the first and it pops in your head, which is not what you should always do in improv. There's plenty of other choices than the first one, but sometimes the first one is money and you go with it.
Yeah.
Especially when there's no second and third one. Nothing else.
Yeah.
Art Carney, though, genius, comedy genius. Art Carney.
Art Carney's good. Yeah, he's a good one. Yeah. Anyway, I don't remember what it was that made me want to talk about or put this on the list. I did it a couple weeks ago. Put this topic on the list, and for some reason, it keeps, every time I see it, I'm like, oh yeah, we should do that. But I don't remember, there's no specific inciting incident that I'm like, this is why. But I will say this. So I started I watch a lot of, or listen to more than watch, a lot of YouTube videos where people play clips of, or they quote back Tarantino's thoughts on other people's movies. So sometimes it's like specific movies, or I watched one today that was Tarantino's thoughts on his 10 favorite 80s movies or whatever. And I just find his take on movies interesting, whether I agree or disagree with it. And one of the things that is that while I think like there's a lot of movies that I think most people would say that's a really good film, that he's like, but it's boring and I didn't enjoy it. And like, it's as much a part, like he can appreciate the art of it while also being like, no, but I want it to entertain me as well. Like and that kind of today made me go, yeah, let's do this as a topic for tonight.
Yeah, I feel like the way about 2001: A Space Odyssey. It is a seminal science fiction movie, but it bores the hell out of me. I got to fight to stay awake for the first half hour.
I will say this. It is. He mentions 2 Kubrick movies in that video that I was talking about, the first video I was talking about, and that's not one of them. I don't know what his take is on that one, but he mentions The Shining, and basically talks about how like Jack Torrance has no story arc, which in the book he does, and he talks about how it's like dreadfully boring. There's a lot of people that were saying it's like dreadfully boring, which I think is overselling. I actually think The Shining was pretty good, having rewatched it recently. But Kubrick definitely is one of the people that he thinks is boring, for you as somebody who likes science fiction and does not like 2001: A Space Odyssey.
I didn't like it. I just find it very boring.
Okay, but I do know that it's an
effort to watch it long enough to get into it enough to then enjoy the rest of the movie.
Yeah, I think that if you were someone who partook in the use of drugs, that would solve some of that problem.
Yeah, I do drink grapefruit flavored seltzer.
Yeah, how could you possibly think something is boring after saying that you enjoy grapefruit flavored seltzer?
Yep.
Yeah, I think that there, especially I think with film, I find that, and maybe it's just narrative, any kind of piece that's supposed to be narrative in general, whether I think that there is a pretty strong dichotomy between like great film and enjoyable to watch, and there's a lot that's in between that's both, and there's a lot that's neither. but there's a fair amount, more so than I don't think of much like music or paintings where I'm like, well, clearly this artist is skilled and this is well done, but it doesn't evoke any proper emotion
so
from
can
me.
we define art then? I know it's a simple thing to do. Everyone knows
Sure.
define art. But I think defining art helps in having the discussion of what is which variant of art. So you got the MFA or whatever. You do it.
I just have an MA. Let's not. I don't want any stolen valor. Let me find a definition of art for us.
Look at cheating. He's going to the Googles.
Okay. The expression or application of human creative skill and imagination, typically in a visual form such as painting or sculpture, producing works to be appreciated primarily for their beauty or emotional power. So I think for our benefit, I would say let's get rid of the visual part, because I think that there is
our podcast is art, baby, and it's audio.
I was gonna say there's music. There's a lot of music. It would be hard to argue that like Mozart
performing arts are arts.
Yeah. And so we'll get rid of that part of that, and then also primarily for their beauty. I don't love that part of it. I do like the second part where it says or emotional power.
Mm-hmm. So that's always been the key to me, is the emotional part. Because I used to think about what's the difference between arts and crafts, right? Painting is a craft. Making pottery is a craft. But when you do it to the high enough level, what you created becomes art. But like not everyone. If I take a pottery class, my pottery is not going to be art. If I devoted myself to it, maybe one day it would be. And to me, it's always like, if you're making something that can make an emotional impact upon consuming it, whether it's viewing it or listening to it, whatever that consumption is, that's the thing that transcends towards art, is when your craft is raised at level. Because I can, give you one afternoon of improv acting and you're doing improv, but are you doing art? Not just because you acted doesn't mean your acting was art. But if you can do it to the point where you are evoking emotion, then I think you're getting to art.
Right. I think in just defining that way, which I agree with you completely, in defining it that way, I almost think that we eliminate the idea of good art that is not enjoyable art.
Yeah. So, it could be.
I mean, enjoyable for this intents and purposes. Enjoyable, I mean, evocative of an emotion, not just like, oh, very nice.
Well, I mean, like, what it does is it makes some things that the form of something doesn't make it art. Like movies are not inherently, with this, my definition, movies are not inherently art. The movies that move you are. So being, Ghostbusters, one of the funniest movies ever made. I'll laugh at it all day. Is it art? I don't know that it's art, but it's an incredible movie. Versus Citizen Kane, which is boring to watch, but is clearly art in the things that it can do and things that it does to you.
Yeah, I agree. Not on that hot take about Citizen Kane, but
and that was just the first classic movie that people dig on in the modern era because everything in it's cliche, like because he invented everything.
Yeah, my friend Wes, when we were in high school,
Can I just call him Wes the Rat Man? In my head, he's Wes the Rat Man. That's what he is in my head.
Yeah, I don't know that he'll like that, or he might actually love that nickname.
Hey Wes, you're the Rat Man.
I don't know that Wes listens to the podcast.
Hey everybody, Wes is the Rat
Man. Matthew is not being insulting in this.
I mean, he's trying.
Calling him that because Wes, in the short film that Matthew and I just completed filming on this weekend, and with Alex. I don't know if Alex is on right now.
The invisible producer, was quite the fine actor in our little performance.
Yeah, but in that film, it's a short part of a larger film, and Wes's theme that he was trying to add to all of the bits was rats, and so we had to have a rat in ours,
which is not really visible in ours, but it's there.
Yeah, and Alex says, "Is that my rat statue?" Now, is our film art?
I'm going to say Probably not, but it's part of subjective. If someone is going through what the modern man in the film is going through, they might be moved. So my son, Jacob, has the United Artists. Is that what it is? Is that who the movie theaters are around here? Am I right? Or AMC. No, it's AMC. The AMC Movie Pass. So he goes to like shitloads of movies, and
jelly. Okay.
At the end of the year, he kind of sits there and he rates them to me. Like, you know, he was home for the holidays and he was rating them, and it was meh. It was good. I liked it, and it made me feel an emotion. Like that was his highest level. It made me feel, and like Godzilla -0, whatever. That kind of made me feel an emotion. Like you know, lots of movies got that, and some movies got it on retrospect. Like we walked out of Deadpool, Deadpool Wolverine, and he was like, made me feel an emotion. Didn't expect it to. Made me feel an emotion.
Walked out after it was done.
Yeah.
The way you made it sound was like
the film. We walked out after having watched it and stayed to the bitter end. For the best after, if anyone who hasn't seen it yet, it has the best after the credits scene in the history of movies. I'll just say that right now. I'm not going to spoil it.
I know one of them, but was there two in that one? I'm just wondering if we're thinking about the same.
There's like a mid-credit, and then there's an end one. The end one's the best ever. I don't want to say it because it's spoilers. Even to say who's in it is spoilers. But we're back. Well, anyway.
This is our first spoiler Patreon cut. Anyway, so a no-limb man on a wall is art. Gotcha. What do you call a no-limb man on your front step?
That's me.
Yep.
It's Matt.
What do you call a no-limb man in the water?
Bob or fucked.
Anyway.
So Jacob felt an emotion. So the feeling an emotion is to me is a decent, but not perfect, but decent thing that makes things transcend into art to me.
Yeah. So I think that for the purposes of this discussion of good art versus enjoyable art, we probably actually need to stay away from more of the finer arts and stay towards the more modern arts.
Because actually, because my definition doesn't hold water in all cases. Because there are some things where maybe making a statement is the same as making you feel an emotion. Because I know your favorite piece of art of all time is a urinal, and that doesn't necessarily make you feel an emotion, but it definitely was a statement in the art world when it was done.
I don't even understand what the reference is that you're saying. Why is it my favorite piece of art?
I don't know, because before we start recording, you said you liked that thing.
I've never mentioned that before.
What were we talking about before the record? The French guy. We did a toilet and said it was art.
Was that you and Alex?
Maybe it was. But you have to left us.
Oh yeah. Okay, I was gonna say I don't
because you did abandon us at one point.
For 10
Duchamp seconds. Did a thing called Fountain, which was a sculpture, but it was basically a porcelain urinal that he just signed it, our mutt, and that was the entire piece of art. Was just the urinal, a real urinal, and saying it was art at the time because it was a statement at the time. But if anyone else just said, "Oh, look at this urinal, it's art," well, that one's not. Just that first time was. So there's some things that are art because of the statement they make and the message, even if they're not entertaining or emotionally moving.
I was in Miami with Pat and Wes a year and a half ago, and we went to a museum of modern art or something there. I forget what the museum was. And while we were at the museum, we're walking around looking at the different exhibits, and there is, the little placard that tells you what, the basic information. There is one of those on the wall, and then there is nothing there. And I literally had to whisper, have they not set it up yet, or is
that the art?
Wall?
Well, that was I've seen that. That's the painting of a cow eating grass.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I mean, the reason that you don't see the cow is because it finished all the grass, so it left, and that's why there's no grass because the cow ate it all. Mm-hmm. So that's what you're left with. Thank you very much, Bert and Ernie. That's from a Sesame Street scene with Bert and Ernie. It was art when they did it.
Yeah. By the way, this is I wouldn't say this is a spoiler, but for
spoiler for Sesame Street. I'm sorry, spoiler for the Sesame Street episode from the 1970s.
No. For the short film that we just finished shooting, there is some voiceover that is supposed to be, as Matthew put it, the goofy cartoons like today's modern like it's supposed to be very like transit, like Atlantic.
The 1930s transatlantic radio voice.
It's supposed to be that kind of voice. And so I did the voiceovers myself because it was easy to do for me. And so I did them all. But because of the structure of it, I also did them as Jordan Peterson. So today's modern man. And it sounded so much like I was just doing a crappy Kermit impression.
Jordan Peterson is a crappy Kermit impression.
Must make his bed every day.
And then lie in it.
Yeah. Dragons are an important part of our mythology.
If there are predators, there must be dragons.
Yeah, they're an archetypal predator. It's bad when in this day and age you're still making Richard Dawkins look like the smart one. So.
The way rehabilitate himself, talk to someone worse.
He's probably like, I like being next to Jordan because Jordan is transphobic as well, but stupid. Whereas I am just transphobic and a bad person. Jordan is all of those things plus stupid, so I look smart.
I have the redeeming quality of being smart. He has no redeeming qualities.
I think movies and music are like the big things that I can think of when I think of good art versus enjoyable art, because there are specifically movies for me as a film goer, as a big film buff,
filmophile.
I think that there's a lot of times where you watch a movie and you're like, I get it. It was really it did all the things, and it had interesting cinematography, and there was all the elements were really like well done, and it sucks. Like Terrence Malick is a great example of like I have seen 2, maybe 3 of his movies, and I was okay with the one from the 70s or 80s with Richard Gere and the Locusts. But then, did you ever see Tree of Life?
No.
It's a very visually beautiful movie. It is like a painting came to life, except that there's no story. The audio is barely, audible, and it's essentially like the world's greatest screensaver. Like, because it's got some really cool shit visually, but there is nothing going on, and it was a Best Picture film nominated film, and my friend Kim and I go see. We used to go see before the pandemic all the nominated films, and and when we went and saw it with an audience of people who were there for the exact same reason to see all the nominated films, everyone in the theater was like, "What the fuck was that?" and these aren't necessarily like the art film crowd, but I've talked to other people who are pretty big movie buffs, and they're like, "What was that fucking movie?" And I know that there's a couple people I know who love that movie, and I'm like, I don't understand how you could watch it.
It's like Avatar, the movie, the James Cameron movie, not the anime.
The Last Airbender.
Yeah, not Airbender. I mean, it was a Fern Gully and Pocahontas ripoff, like pretty much the same exact plot of either of those movies. Especially Fern Gully, because he shrinks down and becomes one of them, kind of thing. But visually, it was amazing. Like, it took 3D to where it had never been yet before, and it was an amazing looking and feeling, and made you believe it was real. But it was just Fern Gully without Robin Williams.
I'm gonna make a bold statement about Avatar. And in part you're going to agree with me, and in part you're going to disagree with me. I'm almost positive. So the statement I'm about to make is solely based on a concept, not on quality. Avatar is to sci-fi what Game of Thrones is to fantasy. In saying that, I mean Avatar is sci-fi for people who don't like sci-fi, because there's lots of people I know who are not sci-fi people who cannot get into sci-fi, and then they're like, "Oh, Avatar was great though. Avatar's like the best movie ever." Those are the same people who are like, "I could never watch like movies about dragons or shows about dragons," and they're like, "But Game of Thrones is fucking amazing." Now, quality wise, vastly different in my eyes. But the do the same thing, which is they get those people who 100% could never participate in the genre to participate in the genre.
Well, I mean, you could say every Marvel movie falls in that category too. They're all science fiction, but people don't recognize them as science fiction because they're wearing a costume.
Sure, but I don't really. The people that I talk to that like Marvel movies are fine with science fiction. There's very few that have been well, I'm not into science fiction, but I like.
No, but Marvel movies, record-breaking money making. Yeah. You talk to people who like science fiction, so they also happen to like Marvel movies.
Yeah, but I have a good amount of people in my life who don't like science fiction at all and are still okay with Marvel.
That's what I'm saying. Like it's like that. It's people who don't like science.
No. I'm sorry. I said that backwards. I have a good amount of people in my life who don't like science fiction, and they're not into the Marvel movies. And the people that I like that like the Marvel movies are into science fiction. So I'm thinking of like 5 or 6 of the same people for both Game of Thrones and Avatar, and they're not Marvel.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. I don't disagree with you though. I mean, I think there are things that are like I said, it's Fern Gully. It's breaking no new ground in science fiction. It's all trope. But visually, it's majesty and amazing at the same time as being all trope and nothing original.
Yeah. I need to rewatch Titanic, not this week because I'm going on my very first cruise ever on this weekend. But afterwards, I need to rewatch Titanic because it's weird that James Cameron has 3 of the 4 highest grossing movies of all time. And I think I've seen every James Cameron movie, and they're my least favorite 3 of his movies. And I think that's interesting. So, but Titanic I saw one time when it was in theaters when I was 13 years old.
It's funny. It reminds me of, I had a friend whose parents are very conservative in that way, in the regards of like no profanity, no sex kind of things, not knowing their son was the biggest pothead I ever knew. And I went up to his little summer cottage in Saugerties, New York, which is right next to Woodstock, New York. And we went to the movies, and it was a movie Blowout with John Travolta. And without really knowing much about it, and we went, and the opening sequence is he's doing sound for a slasher film, and it's just a titty film. It's a sorority house, and everyone's having sex or just having pillow fights topless, but it's all just boobs. And Howard has never seen a boob with his parents in the room before, and he was shrinking down in his chair, so embarrassed. And I glanced over at his parents, and they were just eyes locked ahead, not turning to look at us, like not making eye contact. And I didn't meet Howard until I was 14. So we weren't too young to see a movie with tits. Like at that point, we must have been 16 or 17 by the time I went to his summer house with him. But his parents were so embarrassed because this was a taboo topic in their house.
It's great that you bring up Blowout, which I liked Blowout, by the way. I've seen Blow Up, which is the original, and Michelangelo Antonioni, and Blowout is the remake by Brian De Palma, and I think Blowout is better. That's a thing that I've been told I'm wrong about, but
I've only seen one of them, so it's a better one to me.
But yeah, it was made in 1981 by Brian De Palma, and here's the thing that I think is interesting. So I think the 80s.
Oh, so maybe we did see it the first year of our friendship. It was 81. We met that in 81. Like that was 8th grade for us, so it must have been the summer after 8th grade.
Okay. The 80s to me is the prime example of enjoyable but not particularly good art. Just movies, and I would also argue
about Rima Williams' The Adventure Begins, because that's art, motherfucker.
I mean, if you look at and this is like a film snob thing that I've had people correct me a lot, and not people your age who actually lived it. By the way, I've had a lot of people my age.
I don't know if there were any good movies in the 80s. I mean, they were fun movies. I mean, I love my movies, but I'm like, Was there really? I'm sure there were Oscar winners in the 80s. I'm sure there were. Oh, Gandhi. Gandhi was a really
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is when you think about the movies that I think were really the best movies of the 80s, they don't evoke the 80s vibe at all. Whereas like the best films of the 70s, like The Godfather, even though it takes place not in the 70s, it has the feel of a 70s movie because of the tones in the film and like the color tones of the film
style.
and stock.
Yeah, I'll buy that.
And so when you think about good 80s movies, like Raging Bull was 1980. Raging Bull is an amazing movie. And Scorsese worked through the 80s, so like there's a few good ones there. And there's plenty there's a decent amount of good stuff there. But like it's
not the ones that are memorable, like as list the top 10 movies of the 80s. It's Back to the Future and it's Ghostbusters and
and you look at also
Jedi,
like you look at like decades and like the decades. So we have the 70s, which I would argue is the best decade for film of all time. And then you have the 90s, which is an amazing decade. You had like, that's when you had Tarantino, Pulp Fiction and Clerks and all that, like all that. So you had these two big revolutions. And the 80s, and a lot of people, someone, I forget who it was, said that it very much like mimicked the 70s was this wild time, and the 90s was kind of this wild time, and the 80s was the Reagan, like, let's bring it all back to like America, God, not communist, like, and so like all the movies kind of fell into this just like popcorn flick
except for the teen angst movies, the John Hughes kind of.
Yeah, John Hughes I would argue John Hughes, some of his movies are some of the best movies of the 80s, and that is a indictment of the 80s. Like I like John Hughes.
It's not art. It's just
no.
My high school
I'm not trying to shit on. I'm not trying to shit on John Hughes, but like in any other decade, John Hughes is run of the mill, right? Like like some of his stuff would be like, yeah, that was a great teen movie. Like we love, there's teen movies that came out that were, 10 Things I Hate About You, Mean Girls. There are those movies that kind of hit in other decades, but they didn't define the decade. The fact that John Hughes defined the decade is kind of like Ghostbusters and Back to the Future defining the decade as well. Like we're not seeing The Godfather, we're not seeing Jaws and Star Wars, and we're not seeing
Star Wars sequels, Jaws sequels.
Yeah, but I would argue that once first of all, I haven't seen any Jaws sequels, so I don't know if they're good or
not. The second one is watchable.
Yeah,
but
I've told you my Jaws story, right? So all summer last year, I wanted Logan to watch Jaws, and he kept being like, "It's a horror movie about the summer. I don't want to watch it. It's gonna scare me." And I'm like, "It's not that scary. It's not gonna be that scary. It's just a good movie. It's arguably one of the greatest blockbuster movies of all time. Let's watch it."
It's kind of scary though.
I mean, but he doesn't go in the ocean. He doesn't go in the ocean, so it's not that scary. Like it. So he goes away for like 3 or 4 days, the last week of August, to my father-in-law with his two cousins, and they watch all of the Jaws. They like binge watched the entire Jaws series. And he comes home and he's like, "We watched Jaws," and I was like, "Are you fucking kidding me? Did Bappa show you The Godfather?" And I just started listing.
You see Debbie Does Dallas too, Deep Throat, all the stuff I wanted to share with you.
Anyway, but I do.
So let me tell you how I saw Jaws. This is great because Jaws came out. I was 9 years old. I turned 10 at the end of '77. So when the movie came out, I would have still been 9, right? My brother, being 4 years older than me, managed to get in, like went with some older friend or whatever. But I think Jaws, I don't think it was even R. I think it was just PG at the time. I don't even think it was an R movie.
I think you're right.
Because it was before the days of PG-13, so things got a little rougher. But anyway, he went to see it, and I didn't because I was still, regardless of rating, I was too young for it. And he, at the weekend after he saw it, the day after, whatever, basically retold me the movie, like scene by scene. He replayed the movie for me, but he made it better. Like his take on Quinn dying, he stretched it out. He's like, he had his feet in there, and he's like looking up at him like, he hasn't bitten yet. And then he bites down, and he's lost his legs, but he's like, I can live without legs. Just pull me out. And he was like interpreting the emotion of it, but into words for me. And I think when I finally saw it, I'm like, oh, that wasn't as cool as when Lee did it. Like, where was all the cool begging for his life stuff?
That we went and saw Something Rotten at the Raleigh Little Theater a month and a half ago, something like that. And we watched it, and it was good, but it's a local theater troupe. Like, it's not like a Broadway theater troupe. And then we listened to the Broadway soundtrack afterwards, and we're like, oh, we like the interpretation in our version better, which is objectively wrong, but it's what you became familiar with. And so sometimes that does weigh in, and I think that can weigh in with art as well. Well, it is art, obviously, but like it can weigh in like with, like there's movies that I have like an emotional bond to because they're like, I love Ace Ventura. Ace Ventura is a wildly problematic movie, but it's my childhood. And so like, I just got to kind of, try not to
don't think about it,
emulate it while enjoying it. And I think that does kind of play in, but I still think the 80s is so. I'm glad that you agree with me, by the way, especially as someone who kind of came of age in the 80s.
They were good. Amadeus was in the 80s. I mean, they were good. There was art in the 80s, but it wasn't what defined the era, for sure.
Right. And I would say like do people remember that as much as they remember Pulp Fiction or Godfather or and I think that's.
Well, there's so also you can remember it without even knowing when it was made. Like Amadeus, when was it made? I don't know, 70s, 90s, 80s. It's an old movie.
Exactly.
Like it didn't.
And it doesn't specifically
live in your head.
Yeah. And I think if you look at some of those, like I really enjoy some, like I've seen all the best pictures of the 80s, and I think that I've enjoyed all of them. I'm trying to think of what they all are.
Platoon, but like Cinema Paradiso. What else?
That was not, but that was a good one. But that's also not American one, so that kind of, I don't know where that falls into the equation here. But like the Last Emperor. Have you ever seen?
I don't even know if I've ever seen it. I mean, I know what it is. I don't know if I ever watched it. It was so long ago, I don't remember. Like you're talking about Titanic. I have never watched Titanic. Madhavi had no desire to ever see it, so I have never seen it. I've seen clips of it, obviously. I've seen enough to know the pop culture jokes I can make about it, but we never actually watched it beginning to end.
Nice. Spoiler alert, it is longer. It is longer
than the 3 minutes it took to sink.
Than the boat took to sink. Yeah. And when I've told people that, they're like, well, yeah, because there's a story before the boat sinking. I'm like, but the boat sinking isn't done in real time. Like, if you did that, I'd be like, okay, maybe.
The boat sinking scene is longer than the boat sinking in real life.
Not quite, but almost. Yeah. Okay, so like Chariots of Fire. I love Chariots of Fire. And that actually feels, soundtrack-wise, it's amazing and very 80s.
Little Vangelis action.
Like, it's so 80s.
When I did improv, that was the official slow motion music. You're doing slow motion, the voice guy would put that on every time.
But like, okay, these are the best picture winners. I don't think these are in order. Chariots of Fire, the Ordinary People, Chariots of Fire,
Ordinary People,
Gandhi, Terms of Endearment, Out of Africa, Amadeus, Platoon.
You know, Out of Africa is good, right? You know, it's good.
I've seen it.
Oh, it's great.
But I haven't seen it in a long time.
So Madhavi and I were dating, and we were home in New York for whenever time of year it was out, whether it was Christmas or summer or whatever. And we're going to think about going to the movies. And my wife, Madhavi, whatever, we're like, what should we see? And my mom goes, you should see Out of Africa. And Madhavi goes, oh, is it good? She goes, oh, it's great. I'm like, what's it about? Meryl Streep's in it. Okay, great. But what's it about? Well, Meryl Streep is in it. I'm like, yep, Mom, what is the movie about? She goes, well, I haven't seen it, but Meryl Streep is in it. I'm like, so it's great because Meryl Streep is in it. Like, yes.
Yeah.
Like, that is not enough motivation for us to see it. But it does remind me of another great movie from the 80s, I guess from the 80s. Maybe it was early 90s.
Sophie's Choice.
No, I was just say Rain Man. Was Rain Man in the 80s?
Rain Man is it was one of the best picture winners.
I started seeing Rain Man with Chris. We were home. We with a couple of friends, and we went to the Georgetown movie theater and saw Scrooged with Bill Murray. And we fucking loved it. We walked out of the theater saying that was such a cool version of Scrooge. And then one of us looked at our watch and said, "Oh, you know what? The movie Rain Man is playing at the Kings Plaza Theater in like 15 minutes. Do you think we can make it in time?" Like, yeah, I'll use the power of Leon, my father's partner, and drive like a madman. So we shot across Brooklyn, went and saw Rain Man. And Rain Man was so incredibly powerful that 2 years later, Scrooge was on TV, and we're like, "Oh, didn't we want to see this?" And we watched Scrooge, and halfway through, like, did we see this? I feel like we saw this. Like, we totally forgot Scrooge because Rain Man knocked it out of our memory.
Did you, when you saw Scrooged for the second time, think, definitely saw this?
Definitely saw the movie. It's not a movie.
I like Rain Man. I actually like all these movies, but they're not. But this crop of Best Pictures is indicative of my point. I also forgot The Last Emperor is on there too. Yeah. Out of Africa, by the way. Have you seen it yet? Or no,
it's got Meryl Streep in it.
No,
except for Only Murders in the Building. I really don't follow her work.
Yeah, I don't remember the movie that well. I remember I had not seen it yet when I went to Africa, and we went to the Karen Blixen house, she plays Karen Blixen in the movie, and we were on a tour with a bunch of, like, it was us and one other kid, and then everybody else. The youngest person was other than the three kids was probably 45 at least.
Oh, so molesting you the whole time.
Yeah. Not the whole time. We were walking around.
No, I'm sorry. HOLE.
Yeah. So we're one of our stops on the tour is Out of Africa House, and they're all like, "Oh, this was from Out of Africa. Mike, have you seen?" Because I was already kind of a movie buff, and I'm like a Star Wars guy. Like, at this point, I hadn't like hit like art film yet. I was 13, almost 14.
There's two types of
and
films.
They're like, Out of Africa.
There's films where a lot of people die really fast, and a movie where one person dies really slow. There's two types of films in the world.
Yeah. I don't even remember. Does anybody? I literally know that I've seen it because I think I saw it after the trip to be like, what is this movie about? And then I remember being like, eh. It's a romantic drama film directed by Sidney Pollack, who is great also. But like, there's lots of good stuff there, but I don't know. Robert Redford refuses to do an accent. I remember that. And Meryl Streep refuses not to do an accent. It's an interesting pair.
Mm-hmm. Okay, patron. Like, I think patron story.
Okay,
we're in a lull. I'm going to do patron story. So people watching live, if you're watching live, you get to hear this. If you're not watching live, you'd only hear this if you're a patron, because it is a cancelable story.
I was expecting you to go so much worse. I thought you were going to go full.
Yes, the concert is bad, and we probably were worse back then. But we we were running through it at a rest area on I-95 on the way to New Jersey once. Like, we were like at maybe Maryland House or Delaware House, one of those rest areas, 95, and people were looking over us, and I realized we'd run through the scene in the car. We came up with it in the car, and so we were in the Roy Rogers or whatever, eating our burgers and talking like that to each other just for fun. And people were looking over us, and we can tell they were looking around for where are our caretakers, like, because we just thought we shouldn't be there by ourselves.
I did a play my senior year of high school called The Boys Next Door. I don't know if you've ever heard of the play.
No, I don't have any boys next door.
It's a play about 4 mentally challenged men of different mental challenges living in an apartment together, and they have a caretaker, and it's kind of about their caretaker kind of getting ready to move on to a new job, and them kind of being like stuck where they are because they're varying degrees and types of mentally handicapped or challenged. And I played the character that was the most severely mentally challenged of the group, and I played it for the first like 6 weeks or 8 weeks of rehearsals. I played it pretty straight, like without doing any like speech things, and I just would kind of like do the lines and my theater director kept like he had cast
be more
me.
Offensive. Come on, Mike, be more offensive.
He wanted me to be more broad with it, and finally, like, I went into one of the rehearsals and I was like, I wasn't trying to be an asshole. I just was like, he had been like trying to get something else out of me, and I started doing. There was a guy who lived in my apartment complex that my family lived in at that point in time, who I would talk to when I was walking the dog. He would come out and see the dog and talk to me. So I started doing little mannerisms from him, and it was a complete transformation from the way I'd been doing it. And he was like, "This is great," and I got so into it. And this was, at a time where doing a broad interpretation was not really like seen as offensive or anything. So I kept doing it, and then I would I was 18 years old, so I'm in that like I'm a method actor mode where I wouldn't like come out of character for long periods of time, and I must have been unbearable because I could do it right now. I'm not gonna. But like I would just like transform into the character, and it was so intense. I will say I won an acting award for it. So like
nice.
At the like state level, we went to the state drama festival, and I had a young woman who was my age come up to me after a performance at the drama festival. So she was from a different high school, and she told me that like I was exactly like her brother who was handicapped and
handicapable.
Yeah, and so like there was those things that were like encouraging me to be like.
I thought she was going to come over to you and say, "It's so nice that people like you can get work." Like that would be the ultimate, compliment that she totally bought the character.
Yeah,
like we did Tony and Tina's wedding, which is like an improvised wedding where there's set conversations and scenes that happen, but otherwise you spend most of your time improvising, just chatting with the audience, and just like because they're just guests to the wedding, they're having dinner, and you just schmooze. And the whole time the cast is drinking. Like I have my character, I was father of the groom, and I had a flask with me that was filled with water but looked like vodka, and then I switched to a vodka bottle later in the show, but it's water. Whenever one of us goes to the bar, if you're a cast member, you got ginger ale in a champagne glass or a brown beer bottle with water in it. If you're a cast member, you didn't get real alcohol. And we got an email complaining about how unprofessional the show was because the cast was so drunk by the end they weren't making any sense. And we're like, for someone who didn't like the show, that's the best compliment we could have gotten. Like she totally convinced that everyone was drunk.
Nice. So that was good art.
That was art,
but not enjoyable for that person.
So here's my hot take on art. I'm sitting in what we call the Far East room in my house. It's got Chinese and Japanese art all around, and I do not particularly care for most visual art, like paintings. Famous people, the masters. Like it doesn't do anything for me except Marc Chagall. Marc Chagall's art I freaking love.
Yeah.
But other than that, like Dali stuff is fun to look at, and I understand that, it's groundbreaking what it was. Are you looking up Marc Chagall art to be horrified?
How do you spell Marc Chagall?
MarcChagall.
Gotcha.
A content warning. His stuff is full of pain and anguish. Most of his stuff.
Yeah.
And so his stuff I find moving. But otherwise, my wife loves to go to art museums, and I'm like, I'm going to sit on the bench while you look at each piece of art.
I enjoy looking at art.
I like listening to Garfunkel.
Yeah. I enjoy looking at
and Art Carney. Hey, here I go.
I enjoy going to see visual art.
That's my rap name, by the way. Visual art. It's my
visual art. Nice. I have a bit of a preference to. I don't an aversion to doing the douchey thing, which I feel like is common. Like people, going up and being like, I don't.
The white space and the negative space and the way they are parallel to each other creates a willing suspension of disbelief that makes my nipples a little tingly.
I don't mind the talking about it and analyzing it. In fact, I prefer that than to just like
that's a window. You're looking out the window, sir.
Let's silently spend, like the way it's very similar. I feel like it's very similar that first minute or 2 minutes that people spend with a piece at a museum is similar to when you let the wine breathe. I'm like, I just want to sip the wine and talk about
Yeah, but if it's red wine, you really should let it breathe, or at least pour it into a decanter so it can aerate, or pour it with an aerator.
Sure, but it's people get into they get up their own.
Well, if you're
ass
doing
out.
that, that's probably a cognac or a brandy, and you really are infusing it. You want to breathe that actually, like that's what it's for. Never mind. That's
fine. Okay. So you're up your own ass. Okay.
No. Some of the things are meant to be like enjoyed with the bouquet as part of the sensation. For like white wines, no, white wines drink the fucking wine. Red wines you can drink the wine, but you need to do it. It is best if it has a little breathing time before you drink it. Brandies and cognacs are almost you inhale them because they're so high alcohol content. They are, like that's part of the experience. I hate brandies and cognacs, by the way, so I'm not recommending them. I don't like them. My wife, on the other hand, loves brandy.
All right, you got anything else that you want to talk about with art? I feel like we didn't fully talk on the subject.
Well, I think
I wanted us to have a palate cleanse episode.
We kind of moved it away. Once we defined it, we kind of moved it away from the original idea because entertainment stopped being as much art. It just became two different things of the crafts that we like that can go in the direction of being art, being entertainment, or being both. And it's fine in all three. It's kind of like the first time I saw Captain America, the First Avenger. I walked out of the theater saying, that was actually a film. Like in my head, like as opposed to just being a movie and just being a comic book movie, it actually clicked all the boxes of being a really good film that was really well done to me. Could have left the costume out and it still would have been great,
Yeah, my only complaint about that movie is that the CGI of putting Chris Evans's face on the skinny little body was bad, but other than that movie holds up great. And I really like it.
And that reminds me of another issue that's tough about looking at old movies and judging them is they were designed to see one time in a movie theater with no analysis of watching things over and over again, totally engulfed in a 70 millimeter screen, especially 1970 ones, the 80s, there started being smaller theaters, but I think the directors were still writing for the big ones. And then, we watch it on our laptops or on our TV in our house and we pause it and back up on the scene and watch it again. And, and so it's a different experience than what the artists involved in making it intended it to be.
The bigger the douchebag the director seems to be about that very specific point, the littler the screen I want to see their film on. And the more digitized I want it. Like Christopher Nolan, I want to see it on an iPad pod shuffle. I want to see just the little teeny little screen.
Modern days, it's weird because in the modern day, that it's getting watched in 10 different media, and it's kind of and you kind of have to be willing to take that hit. But but when they made Godfather, they weren't thinking that one day people will watch this on their TV. That wasn't a thought.
Right. And the thing is that when you look at Christopher Nolan and Tarantino and the guys who still shoot exclusively on film, a lot of their points I agree with. I think that I don't know that Tarantino does it as much. Nolan was real hardcore about it for a while. But there is I don't want to see those guys make a digital movie because I think that they are doing wonderful work with film. However, digital is allowing people to make movies that couldn't have made movies 30 years ago. And that's great. When you get
of the greats shouldn't define what the technology is that's used. They let them use what they want to use.
So the more I agree with when they start saying film has a more timeless aesthetic to it. For those of us who have kind of watched and studied film enough, and that's actually one of my big complaints about the 80s. I don't know if they shot it on video or what, but the 80s has this, maybe it was a weird film stock that was popular in the 80s. It has a VHS feel to it. And that could be all the transfers that went on at the time.
Like I say, if you saw it in the theater in the 80s, maybe it didn't look like that. You're
right. And if I saw some of those things re-released in just refurbished or not refurbished, prints that were not refurbished.
Right, but like the original, made from the originals.
I may have a very different feel for it, but because I'm used to seeing them, they have a video feel.
Going to see The Godfather in the theaters a couple of years ago when it was like re-released, whatever, or especially like my favorite movie. But oh my god, it was so much better in the theater, and I didn't see it as a 5-year-old in the theater. And it's like it's such a different experience. Even for my favorite movie, seeing it the way it was meant to be seen.
Yeah. I saw. I've been to enough. They re-releases and stuff that and Godfather's one of those ones where if it's an option and I have the opportunity, I'm gonna go. I've seen it now in theaters. I haven't seen the second one, which I really want to see in theaters. I think it was the weekend of my birthday, or the weekend. No, it was the weekend I was supposed to be in Italy that Logan had pneumonia. They did Lawrence of Arabia
that must be amazing. Doing an IMAX or something, a 70mm screen.
And it was also shot. Lawrence of Arabia was
it's a panoramic
was
epic.
shot. Yeah, it was shot in a film stock that was kind of like used for 3 years. It was the only one of those movies that came out of that film stock that is memorable beyond just the the fact that it was shot in that film stock. Yeah, because it's an amazing film.
Like when Empire Strikes Back came out, what was that? 80, I guess.
Yeah.
What was the theater in my neighborhood had become a triplex. Like they literally built walls down the aisles and made 2 small theaters and a medium theater of what was one theater when I was a kid, right? And I was 12, 13 then. My older brother, saw it. I don't even know where he saw it, but after he saw Empire, and he was like, I had to see it because I love Star Wars, which I had seen at the prime age of 10 when you're supposed to see Star Wars. He took me to Manhattan to see it in a theater on Broadway because it was a 70mm, thing. And he wanted me to see it on a giant screen with giant sound because he was like, it'll be so much better than seeing it in the crappy theater that we watch everything else in.
I have never seen any of the original trilogy in theaters.
So
when they were re-released in like 97-ish, I was not old, and my parents did not let me go to the movies by myself yet, and no one would take me. So I've never seen. So
you might appreciate this. I don't know if we have a VHS that works. In cleaning some of the stuff out, my dad's stuff, and going through just stuff, looking for things and looking for family videos and stuff like that my brother was looking for. I found my old Star Wars VHS set that I gave my dad when I got a letterbox version or widescreen. I gave him my original Star Wars videos that are the original theatrical releases before there were any special editions or messing with it. So they're not letterbox. My letterbox one probably is original also, probably. But I know for sure that set that's sitting in his attic is original.
You should get them digitized.
But they're pen and scan. I think we have. So I bought the letterbox because David Prowse, the actor who played Darth Vader, was here in Cary. And there used to be a science fiction store in a mall that used to exist here. And I bought the set to get him to autograph it. So I have an autograph set, and that's the reason I bought that tape. I'm not sure if that one is if it's original edit or not. I have to double check it.
I would love to see original edit, not pan and scan.
Yeah, so let's see
because pan and scan is the older I get, the more pan and scan is physically bothersome.
It's like watching a YouTube short or a TikTok of a scene from a TV show or movie, and you're forced to watch it.
Who is she talking to? That drives me crazy, especially when it's a movie I haven't seen, because I'm like, okay, if you show me who the other actor was, I could figure this movie out pretty quickly if it's something I want to see. Because a lot of times people in the comments, people post clips from a movie and they don't say what fucking movie it is, and it drives me crazy. And I'm like,
especially for low budget things you never heard of and stuff. And it's like hashtag TV, hashtag movie. I'm like, I don't even know if it's TV or I don't know what it is. I don't know what I'm watching.
Yeah.
What he didn't know was the bully was going to be bullied. Like that's usually the crappy voiceover before the scene starts.
But before we wrap up, I want to just say that part of the reason why I picked this topic, even though we kind of got off topic a bunch, is that this is going out election week, and I feel like we all could use a palate cleanse. So Matthew, why don't you start us off with you like to do the YouTube's part?
Hey, if you're watching this right now on YouTube, or if you're watching an edited version that missed my Get Me Canceled story on YouTube in the future, just look. look, you're on YouTube. Just click the little like button, right? Click the thumbs up, like whatever it is. The technology changes every week. Is it going to hurt you? No, but it'll help us. If you want, you can even just make a comment. The comment can be first, second, third, 16th and a half. I don't care. But a comment helps. So go ahead and make a comment. But join in the conversation. Be like my best friend Mikey and make a comment that I'm not going to remember what point of the conversation you're even talking about. I love those. Be like his daughter Ricochet and make insightful, meaningful comments that let me know that you are at home bored, wishing you got that job at Aldi you applied for. And then go ahead, subscribe and ring the bell so you'll get future notifications of when these videos come out so that you can watch them live or you can like and subscribe and thumbs up in the future. But there's audio, Mike.
Yeah, and for the audio, if you're listening to us on any of your normal podcast players, give us a thumbs up or a 5-star or whatever your app allows you to do. Give us a review if you want. And make sure that you're subscribed because that is super helpful. And if you wanted to give us money, there's an option for that, which is to go to patreon.com/talkingaboutthebigstuff. We have all of our episodes come out 4 days early for $1. $3 gets you a less censored version, and $10 gets you the cancelable stuff. It's a pretty good deal. $10, and those are per month, so it's not $1 per episode. It's $1 for 4.
But Michael,
episodes.
What if I don't like Patreon? Is there another place I can give you money?
Not at the moment.
Not at the moment. No more.
We got rid of the Apple.
Oh, we got fuck you, Apple.
When we switched.
Oh, when we switched over to the Joe Rogan podcast. We're both Joe Rogan now.
Yeah. Not making his money though. We're not making Trump. Not damaging the country the way he is either.
Oh, by the way, check out Mark Maron's Instagram from this week. Everybody, go back a week. He had an interesting post slamming people like Joe Rogan who are supporting fascism just to make a buck on their podcast.
I think he was also talking about Tony Hinchcliffe too, but
sure, he mentioned podcasts also specifically.
Yeah.
So it's both. Yeah.
And one last thing, which is not show related, but I want to mention it anyway. Is
my anus hurts.
If you want to read some of the things that I'm working on writing wise, you can go to michaelchristophercole.substack.com. And Matthew's laughing because I now have 97 Instagram accounts, and him and Madhavi think that's
my wife has put a moratorium. She said I can only follow 17 of them, so I have to figure out which ones to unfollow.
Nice. Okay, cool. All right. And we will cut to Alex here.
I just want to say, everyone, thanks for sticking around with us to listening to us talking about the big stuff, because we have created motherfucking art here.
And it should be enjoyable.
Remember, the conversation doesn't end here. It's just the beginning. If you have thoughts or questions or topics you'd like us to tackle in a future episode, drop us a line on our social media channels. Engage with this video when you are now watching it as a VOD on YouTube. Send us an email. We love hearing from our listeners, bringing us topics, because if you leave it up to the three of us, we're going to eventually be talking about underwater basket weaving. So we would appreciate you guys reaching out a little bit. Don't forget to subscribe to Talking About the Big Stuff on your favorite platform. Give us a 5-star rating. Engage with it. Criticize us. We need to grow and be better, and you're going to help us be there. You're going to help us get to that point. It really helps us more to reach out and also to keep the conversation going. Thank you for tuning in. We'll be back next week with more big ideas and more thought-provoking discussions. Until then, stay curious, stay informed, and keep talking about the big stuff.
The preceding podcast has been a Chocolate Diamond Media LLC production. Copyright 2023, all rights reserved.